Hi, my name is Jun, and in this project, I was responsible for design the whole game logic. I was responsible for the AI system and the physical simulation part. If you can play our game, you will definitely feel this function. Okay, that's the Korean.
Okay, hi, I'm Korean Zhou. In this project, I think of the ideas of this game and the game logic of the game. Also, I designed the whole user interface of the game to handle some engagement details to improve the whole user experience. Also, I did some sounding fact work and testing works.
Hi, my name is Iza, and my main role was to work on the character animation part, import different animation files, and run them when the character enters different states. And the other part was to generate a particle effect when the character attacks the enemy.
Welcome to Naboo Training Base. Naboo is the name of a star in Star Wars, and the training base represents that it's a fighting game. In this first-person action game, players could select different kinds of swords to beat 4 waves of enemy to successfully complete the whole mission. And we are glad to introduce how we made such a VR fighting game. Next, I want to talk about the user interface. The user interface could be divided into 3 aspects: introduction, game start, menu, and the status display. Different from 2D pictures in games of other platforms, interfaces in VR environment could be much more diverse and need more consideration to be suitable and original to every VR game. Only in this way would we make a deeply immersed experience for players. The first thing is tutorial interface. As we all know, tutorial interface is important for games because it could provide basic information of how to play this game to players, and it is more important to provide a tutorial interface to players in the VR game, because most players are not very familiar with VR game, so we could build a tutorial interface for them to have a quick guide of this game. Besides the tutorial interface, we made a brand new interface for the game menu. It is a 3D interface with animations. There are different weapons suspended in the air, waiting for players. Then the players could use the controller to approach to every weapon, and then he or she would be transported to a starting point, which means that the player grab a weapon and start his or her game. What's more, he or she could move to the transporting gate to quit the game directly. As a result, players would interact with the game from the game menu instead of from the real game start, which would give the players a natural and immersed experience.
Hi, I was working on the character animation part. My main job was to find different enemy models and make them animate in different ways depending on different states like attack, dying, or jumping. For this, I downloaded some models along with some animation files from a website called Mixamo. The main challenge that I came across was to make sure that the animations ran smoothly on each model that I used. So at times, if I attached an animation to a particular model, it would behave in a strange way because of a unique skeletal mesh that I had. So I had to run different tests and see which models worked correctly and smoothly with the animations that were required in our game. In order to play the animations, I had to make an animation blueprint in Unreal, and this was assigned to the character, the enemy character. Since all our enemies had the same animations, I thought of using the same animation blueprint for all of them. But that wasn't working at first because I had a different skeletal mesh for each of the enemy that I imported inside Unreal. So in order to use, since an animation blueprint uses a unique skeleton mesh, I had to then use a single skeleton mesh for all the enemies that I imported. So once I did that, I could use the same animation blueprint for all of them. But that didn't work as smoothly as we wanted, because since different enemies had different body structures, uh, we had to have a different skeleton mesh. So maybe in the future, if we want to make it better, we would make our own custom models and have our own custom animations in order to make them work, make them look better.
In this project, I was responsible for designing the AI system because this is a key feature of our game. Since the gameplay of our game is relatively simple, I want the AI can behave more like a humans. So I spend a lot of time just tweaking the different parameters and connecting the behavior tree nodes in order to make our enemies behavior much better. At this stage, they have different states of the enemies. First is idling, the attacking, and the dodging. Basically, the enemy will just rush to the players, and they will randomly choose an attack location after a few seconds. After that, when the player decided to attack the enemies could know, okay, the player is going to attack. I have to dodge. I have to move back. I was really happy that I can finally make this logic, although it's not perfect, but it can give our game more vivid and interesting behaviors from our enemies. I believe another challenge is the physical simulation part. I spent a lot of time on that. At first, after testing it, I created a lot of strange effects of the physical simulation. At the first stage, I just use this logic. When the enemy's life point reaches 0, I just turn on the physical simulation, and at this stage, the enemy will just fly away. That's really, really bad. So another thing, I just introduced the physical animation. After constantly changing some parameters, and finally I believe it looks much more better compared to our primitive stage. And if you have the chance to play our game, and you can definitely see these effects. As for the features I want to introduce in our game, but we didn't, is a shield. Because at first I decided that the players will have the chance to hold a shield to block the attacks from the enemies. And I have already made that fancy shields, but because it is not functional, so we have to finally give it up. Actually, it's a really good shield. Maybe we can make it in the future work.
At the beginning, we thought of different kinds of enemy characters, such as enemy with sword, enemy with gun, or giant boss as the final challenge, as well as different weapons such as lightsaber and shield, bow and arrow, or magic wand. But we finally completed 2 weapons and 1 kind of enemy in our game for kinds of trade-off in the process of development.
So another feature that I worked on was generating a particle effect whenever the player attacks an enemy. So I made my own particle system in Unreal, and I generated a static image that would scale up once the player attacks the enemy, and this would play for a short amount of time. But at present we couldn't add this, integrate it in our game, since we were running out of time, and so we'll have this for our future work.
For our future work, we think we can develop more different kinds of weapons and add some different kinds of skills for the players. So, for example, players can store some power and release the power at once to have a range damage for more than 1 enemy.
So another future work could be adding smoother animations for our models. For now, we just use a single skeletal mesh for all our enemies, and this causes some issues, as some of the animations don't get mapped correctly. which results in some jitter or strange animation effects. So to improve this, we could make our own custom models and animations and then use them in the game. Apart from this, we could also add some more particle effects. For example, for when an enemy or an object gets hit or attacked, we could have different particle effects for those states. And then we can, if we add more weapons to our games, we could have some particle effects for some of those weapons, like initiate a particle effect from a wand or something. Yeah.
For the future improvement, I believe we can introduce a more sophisticated AI system, because at this stage the AI just come to attack our players. Although they have some different strategies, but we can make the strategies more interesting, I believe. And we can also introduce some the shield effect, the shield to block the enemy's attack. That's my expectations.